I trusted my husband for 43 years. That trust shattered the moment I pressed my ear to our guest room door at 5 a.m. and heard him whisper another woman's name, Lorelei. I didn't know who she was. I didn't know she'd been part of our marriage the entire time, and I didn't know she was dying. Before we continue, please subscribe to help us move forward. Thank you. I'm 70 years old. My name is Eleanor, and I live in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. For over 4 decades, I thought I knew everything about my husband, Gilbert. We raised 3 children together, 5 grandchildren, a whole life built on what I thought was honesty. I should tell you something before we go any further. This isn't a story about an affair. It's so much worse than that. Every morning at 5:15 a.m., Gilbert would slip out of our bed and go to the guest room to pray. I thought he was talking to God. I respected his privacy. I never questioned it. Not for 43 years. But 3 months ago, I couldn't sleep, and I heard him whisper that name, Lorelei, over and over, begging her to forgive him. I waited 3 months before I confronted him. 3 months of listening at that door every single morning. 3 months of screaming inside while I made his breakfast and pretended everything was fine. And when I finally searched that guest room while he was at his chess club, what I found hidden in the wall changed everything. A birth certificate, letters, photographs, and the truth about who Lorelei really was. But there was one thing about Gilbert that I never questioned. Every single morning, before dawn broke over Cedar Rapids, before the first light touched our bedroom window, he would slip out of our bed and go pray in the guest room. For over 4 decades, I heard that door click shut at precisely 5:15 a.m. His muffled voice through the walls, the soft sound of him kneeling on the hardwood floor. I thought he was talking to God. I was wrong. 3 months ago, on a Tuesday in July, I couldn't sleep. The summer heat was suffocating even with the windows open and the ceiling fans spinning lazy circles above our bed. My mind was racing about our granddaughter's wedding expenses, $20,000 for one day, can you imagine? And about Gilbert's heart medication that insurance only partially covered. At 5:15 a.m., I heard Gilbert's feet padding down the hallway. Not the confident stride of a young man, but the careful shuffle of someone who's 72 and knows that one wrong step in the dark could mean a broken hip. The guest room door clicked shut. But this time, instead of rolling over and drifting back to sleep like I had thousands of times before, something made me get up. I can't explain it even now. Maybe it was intuition. Maybe after 43 years of marriage, some buried part of me finally recognized that something was wrong. Maybe God was trying to tell me what my husband wouldn't. I walked down that hallway in my nightgown, my own feet making no sound on the carpet we'd installed in 1998. The house was still dark, that deep darkness that exists only in the hour before dawn. I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the tick of the grandfather clock in the living room that Gilbert's mother gave us as a wedding present, and I could hear my husband's voice through the guest room door. I pressed my ear against the wood. My heart was pounding so hard I was afraid he'd hear it, afraid he'd open the door and find me standing there like a spy in my own home. That's when I heard my husband whisper a woman's name. Lorelei, he said, his voice breaking with emotion I'd never heard in 43 years of marriage. Please forgive me, Lorelei. Lorelei. I stood in that hallway until my legs went numb, until the first light of dawn crept through the window at the end of the hall, until Gilbert's prayers finally stopped and I heard him stand up, his knees creaking the way old knees do. I barely made it back to our bedroom before he opened the guest room door. I didn't confront him that morning. I went back to bed and lay perfectly still, pretending to be asleep when he climbed back under the covers. His hand brushed my shoulder, a habit from 43 years of sharing a bed, and I had to bite my tongue to keep from screaming. Who was Lorelei? An affair? A lost love? Someone from before we met? My mind spun through possibilities like a slot machine, each one worse than the last. For 3 months after that July morning, I listened at that door every single day. Always at 5:15 a.m., always the same routine. And always, he whispered that name. Lorelei, I'm so sorry. Lorelei, please understand. Lorelei, forgive me. Do you know what it's like to lie next to someone for 43 years and realize you might not know them at all? Every breakfast I made, scrambled eggs the way he liked them, slightly runny, I was screaming inside. Every dinner we shared at our kitchen table, every time he kissed my forehead before bed, every Sunday when we sat together in church, I was dying to ask him. But I said nothing. I waited. I watched. I listened to him pray to a woman whose name I'd never heard until 3 months ago. Maybe I was afraid of the answer. Maybe I was a coward too in my own way. Or maybe I just needed time to prepare myself for whatever truth was hiding behind that guest room door. Last Tuesday, Gilbert left for his weekly chess club at the community center. Every Tuesday at 2 o'clock for the past 15 years, he's played chess with a group of retired men who argue about politics and complain about their prostate problems. He'd be gone for 3 hours. I knew his schedule by heart. The moment his car pulled out of the driveway, I went to that guest room. I tore it apart like a woman possessed. Checked every drawer in the old dresser we'd bought at a garage sale in 1989. Every shelf in the closet where we stored Christmas decorations and old photo albums. I pulled out boxes of Gilbert's college textbooks. Went through the pockets of coats we hadn't worn in years. Nothing. I was about to give up when I noticed something strange. One of the baseboards along the wall looked slightly loose, like it hadn't been nailed down properly. I knelt down, my own knees protesting now, and pulled at it. It came away easily. Too easily. Behind that baseboard was a hollow space in the wall, and in that space was a wooden box about the size of a shoebox, plain and unvarnished. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely lift the lid. Inside were letters, dozens of them tied together with string, photographs of a little girl with dark, serious eyes, a teenager with a crooked smile, a grown woman in a nurse's uniform standing in front of a hospital, and right on top of everything else was a birth certificate. I picked it up with trembling fingers. Name: Lorelei Ashford. Date of birth: March 15th, 1979. Place of birth: Dubuque, Iowa. Mother: Corinne Brennan. Father: Gilbert Hastings. Gilbert Hastings. My husband. The room tilted. I sat down hard on the floor, that birth certificate still clutched in my hand, and tried to breathe. Tried to make sense of what I was seeing. Gilbert had a daughter, born in 1979. That was 3 years before we met. 3 years before he stood in a little church in Iowa City and promised to love me forever. 3 years before we started building what I thought was a life with no secrets. My husband had a daughter, and he never told me. I don't know how long I sat on that floor. Long enough for my legs to fall asleep. Long enough for the afternoon sun to shift across the room and leave me sitting in shadow. Finally, I forced myself to read the letters. The oldest ones were from decades ago. Awkward, careful handwriting on lined notebook paper. A teenage girl trying to reach a father who never wrote back. Dear Dad, my name is Lorelei. I'm 13 years old. Mom says you probably won't write back, but I wanted to try anyway. I got straight A's this year. I want to be a nurse when I grow up. Do you ever think about me? Dear Dad, I'm 16 now. I know you're married. Mom told me I don't want to ruin your life. I just want to know you just once. Please. Dear Dad, I'm 21. I graduated from nursing school. Mom came to the ceremony. There was an empty seat next to her. I kept hoping you'd show up. You didn't. I don't think I'll write again. But she did write again. The letters continued, spread out over decades. Shorter now, less hopeful, but still trying. The most recent letters were different. Desperate. Painful. Dad, I don't know if you're even reading these, but I'm sick. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors say 6 months, maybe. I'm not angry at you. I forgave you a long time ago. I just want to meet you once before I die. Just once. Please. The letter was dated 4 months ago. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper. I kept reading. Dad, it's been 3 months since my last letter. I'm getting weaker. The treatments aren't working. I'm not asking for anything except to see your face. To know where I came from. If you can't face me before I die, at least pray for me. That's all I've ever asked. That letter was dated 6 weeks ago. The most recent letter was written in shaky handwriting, like the person writing it could barely hold the pen. Dated 3 weeks ago. There was a phone number written at the bottom. Dad, this is probably my last letter. I'm in hospice now. Mom is gone. She died 5 years ago. My daughter Maeve is with me. She's 23. Beautiful, strong. I'm not afraid of dying, but I'm afraid of leaving her alone. I wish you could meet her. I wish she could know her family. If you can't come, I understand. But please, after I'm gone, please don't abandon her too. She's innocent in all of this. Promise me. Please, promise me. Lorelei. I read that last line over and over until the words blurred. Please don't abandon her too. My husband had a daughter, and she was dying. Maybe already dead. And he'd been ignoring her letters for months while he prayed for her in secret every morning. What kind of man does that? What kind of man prays for someone he refuses to help? When Gilbert came home that evening, I had every single letter spread across our dining room table. The birth certificate in the center, like evidence at a trial. The photographs arranged around it. Lorelei at 5, at 10, at 15, at 25. A whole life lived in pictures. I heard his key in the door, his footsteps in the hallway, the rustle of his jacket as he hung it on the hook by the door. He walked into the dining room carrying his chess set, mid-sentence about something that happened at the club. The words died on his lips when he saw the table. The chess set slipped from his hands and crashed to the floor. Knights and pawns scattered across the hardwood like bodies on a battlefield. All the color drained from Gilbert's face. He grabbed the back of a chair like he might collapse without it. Eleanor, 43 years, I said. My voice was eerily calm, even to my own ears. Like I was talking about the weather instead of the destruction of everything I thought I knew. 43 years you've been praying for a daughter I didn't know existed. While I made your coffee every morning? While I raised your children? While I believed we had no secrets. Gilbert's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Sit down, I said. He collapsed into the chair, his hands shaking on the table. Talk, I said. And don't you dare lie to me. Not now. Not after 43 years of lying. Gilbert took a breath that sounded like it was tearing him apart. I was 22. Corinne and I weren't together long, just a few months. When she told me she was pregnant, I panicked. I gave her money and I ran like a coward. I moved to Iowa City. That's where I met you a few years later. And you never thought to mention this? My voice was rising now, the calm cracking like ice. You never thought your wife should know you had a daughter? I was ashamed, Gilbert whispered. Every day I was ashamed. I wanted to tell you. So many times I almost did. But the longer I waited, the harder it became. How do you tell someone you've been lying to them for decades? You just do, I said. You just tell them. That's what people who love each other do, Gilbert. They tell the truth. Tears were streaming down Gilbert's face now. In 43 years of marriage, I'd seen him cry maybe 3 times. At his mother's funeral, when our son Theodore was in a car accident, and now. She's been writing to you, I said, picking up the most recent letter. For months. She's dying, Gilbert. Your daughter is dying of cancer. And she's been begging you to meet her just once. And you've been ignoring her letters while you pray for her every morning like that's enough. I didn't know how to face her, Gilbert said, his voice breaking. I didn't know how to look her in the eye after what I did. After abandoning her mother. After missing her entire life. So you did nothing? I was standing now, my hands flat on the table. You did nothing? That's worse, Gilbert. That's so much worse. She forgave you. Did you read her letters? She forgave you years ago. All she wanted was to meet you once. Once. And you couldn't even give her that. Gilbert put his head in his hands. I know. God help me, I know. I picked up the letter with the phone number. My hands were steady now. Decision made. Your daughter is dying, Gilbert. Maybe she's already dead. And I'm calling this number right now. You can sit there like a coward, or you can finally do something. Eleanor, please. No, I cut him off. I'm done with please. I'm done with excuses. I walked into our bedroom, closed the door, and dialed the number with hands that were steady now. Steady with purpose. With rage. With a strange, terrible calm. The phone rang once. Twice. 3 times. Then a young woman's voice answered. Tired and broken. Hello? Hello. The voice on the other end was young. Exhausted in a way that goes deeper than lack of sleep. The kind of tired that comes from watching someone you love die slowly. Hi, I said, and my voice came out steadier than I expected. I'm looking for Lorelei Ashford. This number was in a letter she... Who is this? The voice turned sharp, protective, like a guard dog that's been kicked too many times. I took a breath. My name is Eleanor Hastings. I'm Gilbert's wife. The silence that followed was so long and so complete that I thought she'd hung up. I pulled the phone away from my ear to check if the call had dropped. But no, the seconds were still ticking by on the screen. Then I heard it. Quiet crying. The kind of crying someone does when they are trying very hard not to cry. When they've already cried so much, there shouldn't be any tears left. Hello? I said softly. Are you still there? My mother died 4 days ago. The words came out flat, rehearsed, like she'd said them so many times they'd lost all meaning. This is her daughter, Maeve. The bedroom spun. I sat down hard on the edge of our bed. The bed I'd shared with Gilbert for 43 years, and tried to make my lungs remember how to work. 4 days? Not 6 weeks when the last letter was written. Not even last week. 4 days ago. I'm so sorry. I whispered. The words felt completely inadequate. What do you say to someone whose mother just died? What do you say when that mother was a woman you never knew existed until this afternoon? I didn't know. I just found out today about everything. I didn't know she existed until a few hours ago. He never told you? Maeve's voice was sharp again, cutting. He never mentioned my mother? Not once in 43 years? How do you explain that? How do you defend a man who kept a whole person, a whole life, secret for over 4 decades? No, I said, because honesty was the only thing I had left to give. He never told me. I found letters today, hidden in a wall. That's how I found out. Maeve made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a sob. Of course they were hidden. Everything about us had to be hidden, didn't it? My mom, me, all of it. Like we were something shameful. You're not shameful, I said quickly. Please don't think that. Whatever Gilbert did, whatever mistakes he made, they're his mistakes, not yours, not your mother's. My mother wrote to him for 30 years, Maeve said. 30 years of letters? He never responded. Not once. And at the end, when she was dying, when she had maybe weeks left, she wrote asking him to just meet her once. Just once. Do you know what she said to me? She said she understood why he couldn't come, that she forgave him. Even then, she forgave him. I was crying now, tears running down my face and dripping onto the bedspread. For a woman I'd never met. For a girl who'd grown up without a father. For my husband's cowardice that had caused so much pain. Your mother sounds like she was an incredible person, I said. She was. Maeve's voice softened. She was the best person I've ever known. She worked double shifts at the hospital so I could go to college. She never complained. Never said a bad word about anyone, not even him. She said he was young and scared and that people make mistakes. She made excuses for him right up until the end. She was kinder than he deserved, I said. Yeah, Maeve agreed quietly. She was. We sat in silence for a moment. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. Could hear voices in the background, someone asking if she was okay. The funeral is this Saturday, Maeve said finally. In Dubuque, at Morrison Funeral Home. 2:00. I know you have no reason to come. I know this whole situation is insane, but if you want to meet me to see who my mother was, you're welcome to come. My throat was so tight I could barely speak. I'll be there. Really? She sounded surprised, hopeful, like she'd expected me to say no. Really, I said firmly. I'll be there, I promise. There was a pause. Then Maeve asked, Can I ask you something? Of course. Do I look like them, like your family? My mom never told me much about that side. She said she didn't know, but I always wondered if I looked like anyone. If there was someone out there who had my eyes or my smile. I thought about the photographs spread across our dining room table, about Lorelai's dark eyes and crooked smile, about my own daughter Vivian with her auburn hair and green eyes. I don't know yet, I said honestly, but I'm going to find out. Maeve, do you look like your mother? Everyone says I look exactly like her, same everything, like she made me all by herself and didn't need anyone else's DNA. Something in my chest cracked open. Then I think you might look like my daughters too. I think we might be more connected than any of us knew. Maeve was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was thick with tears. I'm glad you called. I'm glad someone from his family cared enough to call. I'm sorry it took so long, I said. I'm so sorry. After we hung up, I sat on that bed for a long time. The room had grown dark around me. Through the bedroom door, I could hear Gilbert in the living room. Could hear him pacing, the floorboards creaking under his feet. I looked down at my wedding ring. 43 years I'd worn this ring. 43 years of thinking I knew the man who'd put it on my finger. Finally, I stood up and walked back into the dining room. Gilbert was sitting at the table now, surrounded by the scattered evidence of his secret life. He'd picked up the photographs and was holding one in his shaking hands. Lorelai, at maybe 5 years old, grinning at the camera with missing front teeth. He looked up when I walked in. His eyes were red and swollen. Well? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She's dead, I said. The words came out flat, matter of fact. Your daughter died 4 days ago. Her name was Lorelai. She was 46 years old, and you never got to meet her. Gilbert made a sound like something inside him had broken. He pressed his hand over his mouth like he was trying to keep the grief from escaping. She had a daughter, I continued, my voice still eerily calm. Maeve, 23 years old. Our granddaughter, Gilbert. We have a granddaughter we didn't know existed, and she just lost her mother. She's alone now. Oh, God, Gilbert whispered. Oh, God, oh, God. The funeral is this Saturday in Dubuque, I said. At 2:00, I'm going. Gilbert looked up at me, his face streaked with tears. I can't. Eleanor, I can't face them. I can't. Stop. I cut him off. My calm was cracking now. I could feel rage building behind it like water behind a dam. Stop telling me what you can't do. For 43 years, you couldn't tell me the truth. For 30 years, you couldn't answer your daughter's letters. For 6 months, you couldn't visit her while she was dying. I'm done hearing about what you can't do. I'm a coward, Gilbert said, his voice breaking. I've always been a coward. I don't know how to be anything else. Then learn, I said harshly. You're 72 years old, but it's not too late to learn. Your daughter is gone, Gilbert. You can't fix that. But Maeve is alive. She's alone. She just lost her mother, and she has no one. You can either keep being a coward, or you can finally do something right. Gilbert put his head down on the table, his shoulders shaking with sobs. I stood there watching him cry, and I felt nothing. No sympathy, no urge to comfort him. Just a hollow, aching emptiness where 43 years of trust used to be. I'm sleeping in the guest room, I said. You can have our bed. Or you can sleep on the couch, I don't care. But I can't look at you right now. I walked into the guest room, the room where Gilbert had whispered Lorelei's name every morning for decades, and closed the door. The room still smelled like him. His cologne, his soap, the particular scent of a person you've lived with for 43 years. I lay down on the bed where he'd knelt every morning at 5:15 a.m. and prayed for a daughter he refused to acknowledge in the daylight. And for the first time since I'd found that box, I let myself fall apart. For the next 4 days, Gilbert and I barely spoke. We moved around each other like ghosts in our own house. He slept on the couch. I stayed in the guest room. Every morning at 5:15 a.m., I heard him get up, heard his footsteps in the hallway. But instead of going to the guest room, he went to the kitchen. I'd hear him making coffee, sitting at the table, the rustle of newspaper pages. He'd stopped praying. Or maybe he just didn't know what to pray for anymore. I called Vivian on Wednesday, our daughter. 51 years old, a high school English teacher, steady and sensible. If anyone could help me make sense of this, it would be her. Mom, is everything okay? You never call in the middle of the week. No, I said, everything is not okay. I need to tell you something about your father, and you're not going to like it. What happened? Is he sick? No, he's not sick. I took a breath. Vivienne, your father has another daughter. Had another daughter. She died 4 days ago. I just found out. The silence on the other end lasted so long, I thought the connection had dropped. Mom, Vivian finally said, her voice very careful, very controlled. What are you talking about? I told her everything. The prayers, the hidden box, the letters, Lorelei, Maeve, all of it. When I finished, Vivian was quiet for another long moment. I had a sister. Her voice was barely a whisper. I had a sister and she's dead? And Dad knew the whole time and never told us? Yes. How old was she? 46. She died of pancreatic cancer. And there's a niece, Maeve? Yes, 23. She just lost her mother. She's alone. I heard Vivian take a shaky breath. Mom, I need you to be honest with me. How are you not leaving him right now? How are you still in that house? It was the question I'd been asking myself for 4 days. The question that kept me awake at night, staring at the ceiling of the guest room, wondering what kind of woman stays with a man who could keep a secret like this. I don't know, I admitted. Maybe I'm in shock. Maybe I'm a fool. Maybe after 43 years, leaving feels impossible even when staying feels wrong. I don't have an answer, Vivian. I just know I can't make any big decisions right now. I can barely decide what to eat for breakfast. The funeral, Vivian said. It's this Saturday? Yes, in Dubuque, 2 o'clock. I'm coming, Vivian said firmly. I'm coming with you. And I'm calling Harrison and Theodore. They need to know. We all need to know. Vivian. No, Mom. He lied to all of us. We all deserve to know. And that girl, Maeve, she's our niece. She's family. She shouldn't be alone. After I hung up, I felt something shift inside me. Some small measure of relief. I wasn't alone in this. My children would help me carry this weight. I walked into the living room where Gilbert sat in his armchair, staring at nothing. I told Vivian, I said. She's calling Harrison and Theodore. They're going to know everything by tonight. Gilbert's face went white. Eleanor, no, please, they'll hate me. Yes, I agreed. They probably will. But they deserve to know the truth. And I'm done protecting you from the consequences of your choices. They're my children, Gilbert said desperately. I'm their father. And Lorelei was your daughter, I shot back. Did that stop you from abandoning her? You don't get to pick and choose which children count, Gilbert. You don't get to decide that our 3 children deserve a father, but Lorelei didn't. That's not how this works. Gilbert opened his mouth, then closed it. There was nothing he could say. Nothing that would make this better. The funeral is Saturday, Anna said. I'm going. You can come with me or you can stay here. But if you stay here, if you're too much of a coward to even go to her funeral, then I don't know if I can stay married to you. I mean it, Gilbert. I don't know if I can spend the rest of my life with a man who would let his daughter die alone and not even have the decency to say goodbye. I walked back to the guest room and closed the door. Saturday morning came too quickly and not quickly enough. I put on my black dress, the one I'd worn to Gilbert's mother's funeral 5 years ago, the one I'd worn to my sister's funeral before that, the dress that had seen too much grief already. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and barely recognized myself. My face looked older, harder, like the past 4 days had aged me years. I clipped on my pearl earrings, the ones Gilbert had given me on our 25th anniversary. I almost took them off, almost threw them in the drawer, but they'd been mine longer than I'd known about his lies. I wouldn't let his secrets take everything from me. I walked to the front door and picked up my purse. Gilbert was standing in the hallway, wearing his only suit, the navy one he wore to church and weddings and funerals. His face was pale, his hands were shaking. "I'm coming with you," he said quietly. I looked at him for a long moment. At this man I'd loved for 43 years. This stranger who'd been sleeping next to me while praying for a daughter I didn't know existed. "Okay," I said simply. We got in the car. I drove. Gilbert sat in the passenger seat staring out the window at the Iowa landscape rolling past. Cornfields stretching to the horizon, small towns with water towers and grain elevators, the same landscape we'd driven through together hundreds of times over the years. For 2 hours, we drove in complete silence. Neither of us knew what to say. There were no words big enough for this. As we got close to Dubuque, Gilbert finally spoke. "What do I say to her? To Maeve? What could I possibly say that would make any of this okay?" "Nothing," I said, keeping my eyes on the road. "There's nothing you can say that will make it okay. But you say something anyway. You apologize. You tell her the truth. You face what you did instead of hiding from it." "I'm afraid," Gilbert whispered. "Good," I said. "You should be afraid. Fear is the only appropriate response to facing the people you've hurt. You just have to do it anyway." When we pulled into the funeral home parking lot, my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. There were cars everywhere, more than I'd expected. Lorelei had lived a full life, had friends, colleagues, people who loved her, all the people Gilbert could have known if he'd just been brave enough. And there, standing by the entrance to the funeral home, was a young woman with auburn hair pulled back in a bun. She wore a simple black dress and her eyes were red from crying. When she saw our car, she straightened up, watching us, waiting. I turned off the engine. "That's her," I said to Gilbert. "That's Maeve, that's your granddaughter." Gilbert was frozen in his seat, staring at her through the windshield. "I can't do this," he whispered. "Yes, you can," I said firmly. "You have to." I opened my door and stepped out into the bright October sunlight. And as I walked toward Maeve, toward this young woman who was my granddaughter, I realized that nothing would ever be the same again. Everything I'd thought I knew about my life, my marriage, my family, all of it had changed 4 days ago when I pressed my ear to a guest room door and heard a name I'd never heard before. Lorelei, the daughter my husband prayed for but never had the courage to meet. The sister my children never knew they had. The mother of the young woman now walking toward me with tears streaming down her face. "Eleanor?" Maeve asked when we stood face to face. "Yes," I said. "I'm Eleanor." And then, because I didn't know what else to do, because this young woman had just lost her mother and was facing a family she'd never met, I opened my arms. Maeve walked into them and held on tight. Behind me, I heard Gilbert finally get out of the car, heard his footsteps on the pavement, heard him stop a few feet away, unable to come closer. Maeve pulled back from our embrace and looked past me at Gilbert, at her grandfather, the man who'd abandoned her mother. They stared at each other across that small distance that felt like an ocean. And I thought, this is where it begins. Not the end of the story, but the beginning. The beginning of truth. The beginning of facing what's been hidden for too long. The beginning of whatever comes after. You hear a name whispered in the dark and decide to finally step into the light. Maeve looked at Gilbert for what felt like an eternity. Her green eyes, so much like Vivian's, I realized with a jolt, were red-rimmed and searching, looking for something in her grandfather's face. Recognition, maybe, or explanation, or just some sign that he was real and not another ghost in a life that had already taken too much from her. Gilbert stood frozen on the pavement, his hands hanging uselessly at his sides. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came out. "You came," Maeve finally said. Her voice was flat, not angry, not grateful, just observing a fact. I'm sorry, Gilbert managed to choke out. I'm so sorry. Maeve nodded once, sharp and quick, like she was filing that apology away to examine later when she had the energy for it. We should go inside. It starts in 10 minutes. She turned and walked toward the funeral home entrance without waiting to see if we'd follow. I took Gilbert's arm, not to comfort him, but to move him forward. His legs seemed to have forgotten how to work. We walked through those doors together into the cool, hushed interior that smelled of flowers and furniture polish and grief. The viewing room was more crowded than I'd expected. 50 people, maybe 60. They stood in small clusters, talking quietly. A woman about Lorelei's age was crying into a tissue by the guest book. A man in hospital scrubs stood with his arm around her shoulders. And everywhere I looked, there were photographs. Lorelei as a newborn, tiny and red-faced, held by a young woman with kind eyes. Corinne, I assumed. Lorelei at 5 in a Halloween costume, dressed as a nurse even then. Lorelei at her high school graduation in a blue gown, her arm around her mother. Lorelei in nursing school, surrounded by classmates, all of them young and hopeful. Lorelei holding a tiny bundle, newborn Maeve. Lorelei at what looked like a hospital charity event, receiving some kind of award. A whole life. A full, rich, meaningful life captured in photographs on poster boards arranged around the room. And Gilbert was in none of them. Not a single picture. Not even a gap where a father should have been. Just mother and daughter, and later grandmother and granddaughter, making a family out of absence. I felt Gilbert's arm tense under my hand. He was staring at those photographs like they were evidence of a crime, which I suppose they were. Evidence of all the moments he'd missed, all the milestones he'd prayed about in secret but never witnessed in person. Come on, I said quietly, guiding him to seats in the back row. Let's sit down. We sat. Gilbert's hands were shaking so badly he had to clasp them together in his lap. I kept my own hands folded on my purse and stared straight ahead at the closed casket at the front of the room. Lorelei was in there. The daughter Gilbert had never met. The woman who'd written letters for 30 years hoping for a response that never came. The mother who'd died 4 days ago, still waiting. People began to take their seats. The room filled with the soft sounds of fabric rustling, programs being opened, someone coughing quietly in the front row. Maeve sat in the first row, flanked by 2 young women about her age. Friends, I guessed. The kind of friends who drop everything to sit with you at your mother's funeral. One of them held Maeve's hand. The other had her arm around Maeve's shoulders. I was glad she wasn't alone. Glad someone was holding her up. The service began. The funeral director spoke first, offering generic condolences in a practiced, soothing voice. Then, a woman in her 70s stood up. Corinne's sister, she introduced herself as. Lorelei's aunt. Lorelei was my niece, she said, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. After my sister Corinne passed 5 years ago, Lorelei and I grew even closer. She called me every Sunday. Every single Sunday for 5 years, we'd talk for an hour. About everything and nothing. About her work at the hospital. About Maeve's life. About recipes and books and the weather. The aunt paused, looking down at her hands. Lorelei never complained. Even at the end, when she was so sick she could barely walk, she'd ask about my life. My problems. She always put everyone else first. That's who she was. That's who we lost. She sat down. Others stood up to speak. A coworker from the hospital described how Lorelei had always volunteered for the holiday shifts, so nurses with young children could be home with their families. She'd say, I'm used to holidays being just me and Maeve. We make it special. And she did. Every year, she'd bring homemade cookies to the pediatric ward on Christmas. The kids loved her. A neighbor talked about how Lorelei had organized the entire block to help when an elderly man fell and broke his hip. She set up a meal schedule, arranged for people to mow his lawn, even found someone to take his dog for walks. That was Lorelei. She saw a problem and she fixed it. She never asked for thanks. She just helped. One of Maeve's friends stood up, crying so hard she could barely speak. Ms. Lorelei was like a second mom to me. When my parents kicked me out for being gay, she let me stay at their house for 3 months. She didn't even know me that well, but she said no kid should be homeless. She said I was family now, and she meant it. With every story, I felt the weight of what Gilbert had thrown away grow heavier. This wasn't just a daughter he'd missed. This was an extraordinary human being, someone who made the world better just by being in it, and he'd never known her. Beside me, Gilbert was crying silently, his shoulders shaking. I didn't reach for his hand, didn't offer comfort. This grief was his to carry alone. Finally, Maeve stood up. She walked to the front slowly, like every step took tremendous effort. When she turned to face the room, I could see how young she really was. 23? Just a baby herself break. Yeah, really. Too young to be planning her mother's funeral. Too young to be losing the person who loved her most in the world. My mom, Maeve began, her voice shaking, raised me by herself. She worked double shifts at the hospital to pay for my college. She never complained. Not once. Even when she was exhausted. Even when I know it was hard. Maeve's voice cracked. One of her friends stood up, ready to help her sit back down if needed. But Maeve shook her head and kept going. She taught me so many things. How to be kind, how to stand up for myself, how to make the world's best chocolate chip cookies. A ripple of soft laughter ran through the room. But most of all, she taught me about forgiveness. My breath caught. My mom could have been angry, Maeve continued. She could have been bitter about how her life turned out, about being a single mother, about working so hard, about... She paused and her eyes flickered to the back of the room, to where Gilbert and I sat. About people who weren't there when she needed them. The room was silent. Everyone was holding their breath. But she wasn't angry, Maeve said, her voice stronger now. She said, holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. She said forgiveness isn't about the other person deserving it. It's about not carrying hate in your heart. It's about being free. Tears were streaming down Maeve's face now. So, Mom, wherever you are, I know you forgave everyone who ever hurt you. I know you lived without bitterness or regret. And I'm going to try to do the same. I'm going to try to be as good as you were. She looked directly at Gilbert then. I don't know if I'm as strong as you were, Mom, but I'm going to try. Maeve sat down. Her friends immediately wrapped their arms around her. The funeral director invited everyone to view the casket one last time before we moved to the cemetery for the burial. People stood up, forming a line, moving slowly past the closed casket. Some touched it gently. Some stood for a long moment in silent prayer. Some just walked past quickly, unable to bear looking too long. Gilbert didn't move. We should go up, I said quietly. I can't, Gilbert whispered. Eleanor, I can't look at her. I can't face... You came all this way, I interrupted. You sat through the service. You heard what she was like, what you missed. You owe her this. You owe her the dignity of standing by her casket and acknowledging that she existed, that she mattered. Gilbert closed his eyes, took a shaky breath, then he stood up. We walked to the front of the room together, the last ones in line. When we reached the casket, I placed my hand on the smooth wood and said a silent prayer for a woman I'd never met, a woman who'd been more forgiving than anyone had a right to be. Gilbert stood beside me, his hand hovering over the casket like he was afraid to touch it, like touching it would make it real. I'm sorry, he finally whispered, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. I'm so sorry, Lorelei. You deserved better. You deserved a father. I'm sorry I was too much of a coward to be that for you. His hand finally touched the casket, just for a moment. Then he pulled it back like he'd been burned. We walked back to our seats as people began filing out to their cars for the procession to the cemetery. At the cemetery, we stood in a semicircle around the grave. The October wind was cold, pulling at women's skirts and men's ties. Leaves skittered across the grass, brown and brittle. The funeral director said a few final words. A pastor read from the Bible, something about there being a time for everything, a season for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die. I thought about timing, about how Gilbert had run out of time, how you can pray for someone every day for 43 years and still run out of time to actually know them. Time is crueler than we give it credit for. As they lowered the casket into the ground, Maeve made a sound like something breaking. Her friends held her up, literally held her up, as her legs seemed to give out beneath her. I wanted to go to her, wanted to hold this granddaughter I'd just met. But I stayed where I was, knowing I had no right yet, no place in her grief that hadn't been earned. People began to disperse after the burial, heading back to their cars. Some stopped to hug Maeve, to whisper condolences. She nodded and thanked them, her face pale and exhausted. Finally, when most people had left, Maeve walked over to where Gilbert and I stood by our car. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. My mother wanted you to have this, she said, holding it out to me. Not to Gilbert, but to me specifically. It's addressed to you, Eleanor. My hands were shaking as I took it. The envelope was cream-colored, my name written on it in neat handwriting that grew shakier toward the end, like the person writing it was running out of strength. She wrote it 2 weeks before she died, Maeve said. She made me promise to give it to you if you came to the funeral. She hoped you would. She said you seemed like a good person who didn't deserve to be lied to. She knew about me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She knew everything, Maeve said, and there was something in her tone. Not quite accusation, but close. She kept track of you over the years. Social media, mostly. She said she liked seeing pictures of your family. Said it helped her understand where she came from, even if she couldn't be part of it. Gilbert made a sound like he'd been punched. I should go, Maeve said, looking past us at her friends waiting by their car. There's a gathering at my mom's church. People who want to share stories. You're you're welcome to come if you want. Thank you, I said, but I think we should head home. Give you space with people who actually knew your mother? Maeve nodded, started to walk away. Then she stopped and turned back. She forgave you, Maeve said, looking directly at Gilbert now. My mom. She told me she did, years ago. She said you were young and scared and that she understood. Even at the end, when you never called, never came, she said she forgave you. Gilbert was crying again, silent tears running down his weathered face. But I'm not her, Maeve continued, her voice harder now. I'm not as good as she was. I'm not as forgiving. You abandoned my mother. You let her die thinking she wasn't good enough for you to know. You let her spend her whole life wondering what was wrong with her that her own father couldn't love her. Nothing was wrong with her, Gilbert managed to choke out. Everything was wrong with me. Yeah, Maeve agreed. Everything was wrong with you. And my mom died anyway. Your apology doesn't change that. Your regret doesn't change that. She's gone. You ran out of time. She walked away then, back to her friends, back to people who'd actually been there for her mother. Gilbert and I stood in that cemetery for a long time after everyone else had left. Stood beside the fresh grave of the daughter he'd never known. The mound of dirt that would settle over time, grass would grow, and eventually it would look like all the other graves in this place. Peaceful, unremarkable. Just another person who'd lived and died and been mourned. But she wasn't just another person. She was Lorelei. She was a nurse who volunteered for holiday shifts, a neighbor who organized meal trains, a mother who let homeless teenagers stay in her home, a woman who forgave a father who didn't deserve it. And Gilbert had missed all of it. We should go, I finally said, my voice hoarse from the cold wind and unshed tears. I want to read it, Gilbert said. The letter. Whatever she said to you, I need to know. I looked down at the envelope in my hands. It felt heavier than it should, weighted with words from beyond the grave. Not here, I said. And not now, when we get home. The drive back to Cedar Rapids was longer than the drive there had been. Every mile felt like dragging weights behind us. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that were too beautiful for a day like this. Gilbert stared out the window the entire time. Didn't speak. Didn't move except to wipe tears from his face every few minutes. I drove and tried not to think about the envelope in my purse. Tried not to wonder what Lorelei had written. What message she'd wanted to send to the wife of the man who'd abandoned her. When we pulled into our driveway in Cedar Rapids, the house looked exactly the same as when we'd left it that morning. Same white shutters. Same flower beds I'd planted 20 years ago. Same mailbox at the end of the drive. Everything looked the same, but nothing was the same. We'd left this morning as people who had 3 children, 5 grandchildren, a marriage of 43 years. We came home as people who had 4 children, 1 dead, and 6 grandchildren, one of whom we'd just met at her mother's funeral. We came home as people who knew the truth now, and you can't unknow the truth once you've seen it. Inside, I hung my coat on the hook by the door, set my purse on the table, walked into the kitchen and filled the kettle with water for tea because that's what you do. You make tea. You go through the motions of normal life even when nothing is normal anymore. Gilbert sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten thousands of meals together over the years, the same table where I'd confronted him with those letters just a week ago. Had it only been a week? It felt like years. The kettle whistled. I poured water over tea bags in our usual mugs, his blue, mine white with yellow flowers, and sat down across from him. I pulled the envelope from my purse and set it on the table between us. We both stared at it. Open it, Gilbert said. My hands were shaking as I slid my finger under the envelope flap. The paper inside was folded in thirds, covered in that same neat handwriting that had deteriorated by the end. I unfolded it and began to read aloud. Dear Eleanor, you don't know me, but I've known about you for 43 years. I hope that doesn't sound creepy. I promise I'm not some stalker. I wanted to know about my father's life, the life he chose instead of me, and you were a big part of that life. I've seen pictures of you on Facebook over the years. You and Gilbert at your children's weddings. You holding your grandchildren. You look happy in those pictures. I'm glad. I never wanted you to be unhappy. None of this was your fault. I'm writing this because I'm dying and I need to tell someone the truth before I go. The truth is that I forgave Gilbert a long time ago. When I was 18 and finally understood that some people are just too broken to be parents, too scared to face their mistakes. I had a good life without him. My mother, Corinne, was everything a parent should be: loving, supportive, present. She worked hard to give me opportunities. She sacrificed so much for me. And when I had my daughter, Maeve, I tried to be that same kind of mother. I'm proud of the life I built. I'm proud of my work as a nurse. I'm proud of my daughter. I'm proud that I raised her with love instead of bitterness. But I need you to know something, Eleanor. I forgave Gilbert, but that doesn't mean what he did was okay. It doesn't mean the absence didn't hurt. It doesn't mean I didn't spend my whole childhood wondering what was wrong with me that my own father couldn't love me. I forgave him for my own peace, so I could live without anger eating away at me, but forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. My voice was shaking now. Gilbert had his head in his hands, his shoulders trembling. I kept reading. The reason I'm writing to you is because of Maeve, my daughter, your granddaughter. I'm dying, and my biggest regret, my only real regret, is that I'm leaving her alone in the world. Her father died in a car accident when she was 3. My mother is gone. I have a few cousins, an aunt, but no close family. Maeve is going to be alone. And that breaks my heart more than dying does. Eleanor, I don't know you, but I've watched you from afar for years. And you seem kind. You seem like someone who values family. So I'm asking you something I have no right to ask. Please don't let Maeve be alone. She's innocent in all of this. She never did anything wrong. She doesn't deserve to lose her mother and have no family to catch her. Your children, Vivian, Harrison, and Theodore, they're Maeve's half-siblings. She has siblings she's never met, cousins she doesn't know exist, a whole family that she's been cut off from because of choices Gilbert made decades ago. Please tell them about her. Please give her a chance to know her family. I'm not asking you to forgive Gilbert. That's between you and him. I'm not even asking you to stay with him, though I imagine that decision is weighing on you right now. I'm just asking you to let Maeve in, to give her what I never had, a place in the family. Gilbert prayed for me every morning. Maeve told me she heard him once when she called, whispering my name in the background. I want you to tell him something for me. Tell him his prayers were heard. I heard them, even if he didn't know it. God heard them. The universe heard them. But tell him this too. Prayers without action are just words in the dark. They're whispers that don't change anything. They're wishes that don't come true. Maeve is alive. She's here. She needs family. She needs more than whispers. Please don't let him fail her the way he failed me. I don't know if you'll even read this letter. I don't know if you'll come to my funeral. But if you do, if you're reading these words, then thank you. Thank you for caring enough to show up. That's more than he ever did. With hope and gratitude, Lorelei Ashford. I folded the letter carefully and placed it back on the table. The kitchen was silent except for the ticking of the clock on the wall and Gilbert's ragged breathing. She was right, I finally said. About everything. Prayers without action are just words in the dark. Gilbert looked up at me, his face ravaged by grief. What do I do? How do I fix this? You can't fix it, I said. Lorelei is gone. You can't fix that. You can't get back those 46 years. You can't undo the abandonment. You can't unhurt her. She died without ever meeting you, and that's something you're going to have to live with for the rest of your life. Then what's the point? Gilbert asked, his voice breaking. What's the point of anything now? Maeve, I said firmly. The point is Maeve. She's alive, she needs family. And we're going to give her what Lorelei asked for. We're going to make sure she's not alone. How? Gilbert asked. She hates me. You heard her at the cemetery. She's not as forgiving as her mother. No, I agreed. She's not. And she has every right not to be. But we're not doing this for your redemption, Gilbert. We're not doing this so you can feel better about yourself. We're doing this because it's the right thing to do. Because Lorelei asked us to. Because Maeve deserves to know her family. I stood up, my tea forgotten and growing cold. Tomorrow, I'm calling Vivian, Harrison, and Theodore. I'm telling them everything. About Lorelei. About Maeve. And they're going to decide for themselves whether they want to meet their niece, whether they want to let her into their lives. And us? Gilbert asked quietly. What about us? Eleanor. I looked at this man I'd been married to for 43 years. This man who'd lied to me every single day of those 43 years. Who'd prayed for a daughter in secret while I made his breakfast. who'd let a woman die without ever meeting her because he was too much of a coward to face his mistakes. I don't know, I said honestly. I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if I can stay married to you. I don't know anything right now except that I'm exhausted and heartbroken and I need time. How much time? Gilbert asked. I don't know, I said again. Maybe forever. Maybe I'll spend the rest of my life not knowing if I can forgive you. Maybe that's just what our marriage is now. Me not knowing if I can stay, and you living with the consequences of your lies. I walked toward the hallway, toward the guest room where I'd been sleeping. Eleanor, Gilbert called after me. I stopped but didn't turn around. I love you, he said. I know I don't deserve to say that. I know I've destroyed any right I had to your love. But I need you to know that I do love you. I always have. I stood there for a long moment, my back to him. Love without honesty isn't love, I finally said. It's just a comfortable lie. And I've had enough of lies. I walked into the guest room and closed the door. Outside, the sun had fully set. Darkness settled over Cedar Rapids, over our house on Maple Street, over the life we'd built that had turned out to be built on sand. I lay down on the bed where Gilbert used to pray and held Lorelei's letter against my chest. And I thought about a woman I'd never met. A woman who'd been braver and kinder and more forgiving than I knew how to be. A woman who'd asked me to take care of her daughter with her last written words. I thought about Maeve, 23 and alone, standing beside her mother's grave. And I thought about my own children, who were about to learn they had a sister they'd never meet and a niece who needed family. Tomorrow I would call them. Tomorrow I would start the hard work of telling the truth and putting together the pieces of a family that should never have been broken. But tonight, I just held a dead woman's letter and cried for all of us. For Lorelei, for Maeve, for my children, for Gilbert, and for myself. For the innocent victims of secrets kept too long. For the damage that whispers in the dark can do. For the price we all pay when someone chooses prayers over action. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the guest room watching shadows move across the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. Around 3 a.m, I heard Gilbert get up, heard him walk to the kitchen, the sound of the refrigerator opening and closing, the creak of the floorboards as he paced. He didn't go back to the couch. At dawn, I heard him leave through the front door, his car starting, driving away. I didn't get up to see where he was going. Didn't care, really. Maybe he went to drive around aimlessly. Maybe he went to sit in a parking lot somewhere and cry. Maybe he finally went to church to pray in person instead of in secret. It didn't matter. Nothing he did now could change what had already been done. At 7 o'clock, I got up and made coffee. Sat at the kitchen table with Lorelei's letter spread out in front of me and my phone in my hand. I called Vivian first. She answered on the second ring. Mom, how was the funeral? Hard, I said. Vivian, I need you to come over today and bring Harrison and Theodore. We need to talk. All of us together. Is it Dad? Is something wrong? Everything is wrong, I said. But I can't explain it over the phone. Can you be here by noon and bring your brothers? There was a pause. Then Vivian said, I'll call them now. We'll be there. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet kitchen and tried to figure out what I was going to say. How do you tell your children that their father had a secret daughter who just died? How do you explain that they have a niece who's grieving alone? How do you make them understand the magnitude of the lies without destroying their relationship with their father completely? You can't, I realized. You just tell the truth and let them feel whatever they're going to feel. Gilbert came home around 10. He looked terrible, unshaven, his eyes red and swollen, his clothes wrinkled like he'd slept in them, which maybe he had in his car somewhere. The kids are coming at noon, I said without preamble. I'm telling them everything. Gilbert nodded slowly. He didn't argue. Didn't ask me not to, just walked to the bathroom to shower and change. When he came back out, dressed in clean clothes but looking no better, he sat in his armchair and stared at nothing. We waited. At noon exactly, I heard cars pulling into the driveway, doors slamming, voices on the front porch. Vivian came in first, followed by Harrison and Theodore, all 3 of my children looking worried and confused. Behind them came their spouses, Vivian's husband Peter, Harrison's wife Nina, Theodore's husband James. What's going on? Harrison asked, looking between Gilbert and me. You sounded upset on the phone, Mom. Sit down, I said. All of you, please sit down. They arranged themselves around the living room. Vivian and Peter on the couch, Harrison and Nina in the chairs by the window, Theodore and James on the love seat, all of them watching me with concern. Gilbert stayed in his armchair, hunched over like he was trying to make himself smaller, trying to disappear. I stood in the middle of the room with Lorelei's letter in my hands. 2 weeks ago. I began, my voice steadier than I expected. I discovered something about your father, something he's been hiding from all of us for over 40 years. Mom, what is it? Vivian asked, her face going pale. I looked at Gilbert. He wouldn't meet my eyes, just stared at his hands. Your father has another daughter, I said. The words fell into the room like stones into still water. Had another daughter. Her name was Lorelei Ashford. She was born in 1979 in Dubuque. Her mother was a woman named Corinne Brennan. Your father got Corinne pregnant when he was 22, gave her money, and ran away. He never met his daughter, never contacted her, never acknowledged her existence. The silence in the room was absolute. No one moved. No one breathed. Lorelei died last week, I continued, from pancreatic cancer. She was 46 years old. She spent the last year of her life trying to contact your father, writing letters, begging him to meet her just once before she died. He ignored every letter. She died without ever meeting him. No, Vivian whispered. No, that can't be true. It's true, I said. I held up Lorelei's letter. This is a letter she wrote to me 2 weeks before she died. Your father and I went to her funeral yesterday in Dubuque. Harrison stood up abruptly. You're telling me I had a sister? I had a sister for my entire life and nobody told me? Nobody told me either, I said. I found out 2 weeks ago when I discovered letters your father had hidden in a wall. Theodore was staring at Gilbert with an expression I'd never seen on his face before. Pure betrayal. Dad, is this true? Gilbert finally looked up. His face was wet with tears. Yes, he said hoarsely. It's all true. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You're sorry? Harrison's voice was rising now, anger replacing shock. You had a daughter, we had a sister, and you're sorry? Sorry doesn't begin to cover this, Dad. I don't even have words for what this is. Harrison, please, Gilbert started. No, Harrison cut him off. No, you don't get to talk right now. You don't get to explain or make excuses. You lied to all of us. For our entire lives, you lied. Vivian hadn't moved from the couch. She was staring at me, her face completely white. Mom, you said she died last week. The funeral was yesterday? Yes. What was she like? Vivian's voice was barely audible. Our sister. What was she like? I felt tears prick my eyes. She was a nurse. She worked at a hospital in Dubuque. Everyone who spoke at her funeral talked about how kind she was, how giving, how she volunteered for holiday shifts so other nurses could be with their families, how she organized help for neighbors who needed it, how she took in homeless teenagers. She sounds amazing, Theodore said softly. She sounds like someone I would have wanted to know. There's more, I said, and everyone looked at me. Lorelei had a daughter. Her name is Maeve. She's 23 years old. Your niece. Oh my God, Vivian breathed. Maeve just lost her mother, I continued. She has very little family left. Her father died when she was 3. Her grandmother Corinne died 5 years ago. She's essentially alone. I looked at each of my children in turn. Lorelei's last wish was that Maeve not be alone, that she have a chance to know her family, to know you, her half-siblings, her aunts and uncles, her cousins. Harrison was pacing now, running his hands through his hair. Well, this is insane. This is absolutely insane. I want to meet her, Vivian said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. Maeve, I want to meet my niece. Vivian. Her husband Peter started. No, Vivian said firmly. None of this is her fault. None of it is Lorelei's fault either. They're both victims of Dad's choices. And I'm not going to punish Maeve for what he did. I'm not going to do to her what he did to Lorelei, pretend she doesn't exist. You're right, Theodore said, looking at his sister. Then he turned to Gilbert. But I can't look at you right now, Dad. I can't even process what you did. How could you? How could you know you had a daughter and just ignore her? How could you let her die without ever meeting her? Gilbert's shoulders were shaking. I was ashamed. I was scared. I didn't know how to... You didn't know how to pick up a phone? Harrison interrupted, his voice harsh. You didn't know how to write a letter back? You didn't know how to be a decent human being? Harrison, I said quietly. That's enough. Is it? Harrison turned to me. Is it enough, Mom? Because I don't think it is. I don't think anything is enough to explain this. And I want to know, how are you still here? How are you not packing your bags right now? It was the question I'd been asking myself for 2 weeks, the question that kept me awake at night. I don't know, I admitted. I honestly don't know. Maybe I'm in shock. Maybe I'm too old to start over. Maybe I'm a fool. Or maybe I'm just trying to honor Lorelei's request, to make sure Maeve isn't alone. And I can't do that if I walk away from all of you. Vivian stood up and crossed the room to me. She took Lorelai's letter from my hands and read it silently, tears streaming down her face. When she finished, she folded it carefully and handed it back to me. Then she turned to Gilbert. You prayed for her every morning, Vivian said. Not a question. A statement. Gilbert nodded miserably. Every morning for over 40 years, you prayed for a daughter you refused to know. You whispered her name in the dark instead of saying it in the light. You asked God to watch over her instead of watching over her yourself. Vivian's voice was shaking with fury now. Do you understand how cruel that is? How selfish? You got to feel like a good person because you prayed. You got to ease your conscience with whispers. But Lorelai grew up without a father. She died without ever meeting you. And you call that prayer? I call it cowardice. I know, Gilbert whispered. You're right, about all of it. I don't want your agreement, Vivian said coldly. I don't want your apologies. I want you to have been different. I want you to have been brave. But you weren't. And now Lorelai is dead and there's nothing any of us can do about it. She turned back to me. I want Maeve's contact information. I'm going to call her. I'm going to introduce myself. And I'm going to make sure she knows she has family who wants to know her. Me too, Theodore said, standing up. I want to meet her. Harrison was still pacing, his face red with anger. I need time. I need to process this. I can't just jump into meeting some stranger and pretending we're family. She's not a stranger, Vivian said sharply. She's our niece. She's family, whether you like it or not. Don't tell me what I have to feel, Harrison shot back. Don't tell me I have to immediately accept that Dad had a secret daughter, and now we're supposed to play happy family with a girl we've never met. I'm angry. I'm hurt. And I'm allowed to feel that way. No one's saying you're not allowed to feel angry, I said, stepping between them before this devolved into a full argument. You have every right to be angry. All of you do. But Maeve didn't do anything wrong. She's just a girl who lost her mother. Whatever you decide about your father, don't take it out on her. Harrison closed his eyes and took a deep breath. You're right. I know you're right. I need time. That's fair, I said. Vivian turned to Gilbert one more time. I'm going to meet Maeve. I'm going to be there for her the way you never were for Lorelai. And I'm doing it despite you, not because of you. Don't think this makes anything right. Don't think this earns you any forgiveness. Gilbert nodded, not looking up. Come on, Vivian said to Theodore. Let's go. I can't be in this house right now. They left, taking their spouses with them. Harrison stayed a moment longer, looking at Gilbert with an expression I couldn't quite read. Disgust? Pity? Grief? I grew up thinking you were a good man, Harrison finally said. I thought you were someone to look up to model myself after. Finding out you could do something like this. It makes me question everything I thought I knew. About you, about our family, about myself. Harrison, Gilbert started. Don't, Harrison interrupted. Just don't. I'll call you when I'm ready to talk, but I don't know when that will be. He left, Nina following silently behind him, her hand on his back. And then it was just Gilbert and me in the living room that suddenly felt cavernous and empty. For 2 weeks, the silence in our house was suffocating. Gilbert slept on the couch. I stayed in the guest room. We moved around each other like ghosts, barely speaking except when necessary. Harrison didn't call. Didn't return Gilbert's calls either, but Vivian called me every day to update me. She'd reached out to Maeve through Facebook. They'd talked on the phone. They were planning to meet for coffee in Des Moines, halfway between Cedar Rapids and Dubuque. She seems nice, Mom, Vivian told me one evening. Scared, but nice. She said she never expected anyone from the family to reach out. She thought we'd all hate her. How could anyone hate her, I said. She didn't do anything. I know, but she grew up with the story of the father who abandoned her mother. I think she assumed we'd see her the same way. It's something shameful to be hidden away. When are you meeting her? This Saturday. At that cafe on Maple Street in Des Moines. 2:00. Do you want to come? I hesitated. Part of me wanted to be there. To meet Maeve properly, not at her mother's funeral. To start building whatever relationship we were going to have. But another part of me thought Vivian and Maeve deserved time together without me hovering. Deserved to meet as what they were, aunt and niece, without the complication of Gilbert's wife being there. I think you should go alone, I finally said. You and Theodore. Let her get to know you first. I'll meet her later when she's ready. Are you sure? I'm sure. Okay, Vivian said. Then, quieter. Mom, are you going to leave Dad? I don't know, I said honestly. Everyone keeps asking me that. And I don't know. Some days I think I have to. That I can't stay with someone who lied to me for our entire marriage. Other days I think about packing up 43 years of life and starting over at 70, and I just can't imagine it. You don't have to decide right now, Vivian said gently. You don't have to decide ever if you don't want to. Just do what feels right for you. What feels right is for none of this to have happened, I said. But we don't get that option, do we? No, Vivian agreed. We don't. Saturday came. Vivian and Theodore drove to Des Moines to meet Maeve. I stayed home and cleaned the house, scrubbing counters and vacuuming carpets like physical activity could somehow make sense of the chaos in my head. Gilbert sat in his chair and watched me, his face haggard and gray. They're meeting her today, he said. I know. Without me. Yes, I deserve that, he said quietly. I stopped vacuuming and looked at him. Really looked at him. This man had aged a decade in 2 weeks. Lost weight he couldn't afford to lose. His hands trembled constantly now. Gilbert, I said, I need to ask you something. And I need you to be honest. Okay, why did you keep praying for her? If you weren't going to have a relationship with her, if you weren't going to respond to her letters or meet her, why keep praying? What was the point? Gilbert was quiet for a long time. Then he said, because it was the only thing I could do that felt like I was still her father, even in the smallest way. Prayer was, it was my connection to her. It was how I carried her with me. I know that sounds insane. I know it doesn't make sense. But every morning when I said her name, I felt like I was honoring her existence, acknowledging that she was real, that she mattered. But she could have mattered more if you'd actually known her, I said. She could have mattered in ways that changed both your lives. Instead of prayers, you could have had a relationship. I know, Gilbert said, tears running down his face again. Always tears now. I know, I was a coward. I've been a coward my whole life, and now it's too late to be anything else. I didn't have a response to that, so I just went back to vacuuming. At 5 o'clock, Vivian called. Mom, she said, and I could hear tears in her voice. Mom, she looks just like me. When she walked into the cafe, it was like looking at myself at 23. Same hair, same eyes, same way of tilting her head when she's nervous. How did it go? It was good. Hard, but good. We talked for 3 hours. She told us about her mom, about growing up. We told her about our families, about you and Dad. Well, mostly about you. She asked so many questions about the family, about where she came from. And Theodore? He's head over heels. You know how Theodore is with people who need family. He's already invited her to Thanksgiving. That's 7 months away, I said. I know, but he wants her to know she's included, that she has a place with us. I felt something loosen in my chest, something that had been tight and painful for 2 weeks. I'm glad, I said. I'm so glad you reached out to her. Mom, there's something else, Vivian said, her voice changing. Maeve asked about Dad. She wanted to know if he regretted what he did, if he was sorry. What did you tell her? I told her the truth, that he's drowning in regret, that he's been crying for 2 weeks straight, that he prayed for her mother every day for over 40 years. But I also told her that regret doesn't undo the damage, that being sorry isn't the same as having been there. That's fair, I said. She said, Vivian paused. She said she's not ready to meet him yet. She said maybe someday, but not now. She needs time to know us first, to trust that we're not going to disappear on her like he did to Lorelai. I understand. Do you think Dad will understand? I looked across the living room at Gilbert, hunched in his chair, looking like a man who'd lost everything. He's going to have to, I said. Over the next few weeks, Vivian and Theodore met with Maeve regularly. Coffee dates became lunches, became dinners. They included her in family text message chains. Sent her photos of the cousins she'd never met. Slowly, carefully built a bridge between Maeve's life and ours. Harrison finally came around. 4 weeks after learning about Lorelai, he called and asked for Maeve's contact information. I gave it to him. A week later, he told me he'd met her for lunch. She's good people, Mom, he said. I can see why Theodore and Vivian like her so much. And she's got Lorelai's kindness. You can tell just from talking to her. She's been through hell and she's not bitter about it. Are you still angry at your father? I asked. Yeah, Harrison said. But I'm also angry at myself for being angry, if that makes sense. Like, I know Dad made a terrible choice, but he's still my dad, and I love him. And I hate that I love him right now because it would be easier if I could just be angry. Love doesn't stop just because someone betrays you, I said. It should, probably, but it doesn't. Is that why you're still there? Harrison asked. Still in the house with him? Partly, I admitted. And partly because I'm 70 years old and tired. And partly because I made a promise to Lorelai to take care of Maeve. And I can't do that if I blow up the entire family. And partly because, after 43 years, I don't know who I am without being Gilbert's wife. That's a lot of partleys, Harrison said gently. I know, I said. I'm full of partleys these days. Nothing is clear anymore. Everything is complicated. Are you happy though, Mom? Putting aside everything else, are you happy? I thought about that question for a long time before answering. No, I finally said. I'm not happy, but I don't know if I'd be happier if I left either. So I'm choosing to stay, for now, and trying to figure out what happiness even means anymore. 2 months after Lorelei's funeral, Maeve came to Sunday dinner at our house. Gilbert wasn't invited. Vivian had made that very clear. Maeve's not ready to meet him yet. This is about her getting to know us, getting comfortable with the family. Dad needs to accept that. So Gilbert stayed in the bedroom while the rest of us, me, Vivian and Peter, Harrison and Nina, Theodore and James, and all the grandchildren, gathered around our dining room table with Maeve. She was nervous at first, sitting between Vivian and Theodore, her hands folded in her lap. But the grandchildren drew her out. They were curious and open in the way only children can be. You're our cousin, 7-year-old Emma asked. Sort of, Maeve said. It's complicated. Do you like ice cream? Emma asked, because to a 7-year-old, this was the important question. I love ice cream, Maeve said, smiling. Then you're family, Emma declared, and everyone laughed. Over pot roast, the same recipe I'd been making for 43 years, we talked. Maeve told us about her job as a teacher's aide at an elementary school, about the kids she worked with, about her mom's house in Dubuque that she was trying to figure out what to do with. It's too big for just me, she said, but it's full of my mom. Every room has memories. I don't know how to let it go. You don't have to decide right away, I said gently. You can take your time. My mom always said that too, Maeve said, her eyes filling with tears. Take your time, Maeve. Don't rush. Vivian put her arm around Maeve's shoulders. After dinner, I walked Maeve out to her car. The October evening was cool, leaves falling from the trees on Maple Street. Thank you for including me, Maeve said. You didn't have to. Yes, we did, I said. Your mother asked me to. And more than that, we wanted to. Your family, Maeve. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, he was here, wasn't he? Gilbert, he was in the house somewhere. In the bedroom, I admitted. He wanted to meet you, but we told him you weren't ready. I don't know if I'll ever be ready, Maeve said. How do you meet someone who abandoned your mother? What do you even say to a person like that? I don't know, I said honestly. But I think your mother would want you to try eventually. Not for his sake, for yours. So you're not carrying around anger and resentment the way Gilbert carried guilt. My mom was better at forgiveness than I am, Maeve said. Your mom had 46 years to practice, I said. You've had 2 months. Give yourself time. Maeve hugged me then. A real hug, not the polite kind. I'm glad I know you, she said. All of you. I'm glad I'm not alone anymore. After she drove away, I went back inside. The family was cleaning up, washing dishes, putting away leftovers, laughing at something Theodore said. I walked down the hallway to the bedroom where Gilbert had been hiding. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. She was here, he said without looking up. My granddaughter was in this house, eating at our table, and I couldn't even meet her. No, I agreed. You couldn't. Will she ever want to meet me? I don't know, I said. Maybe, maybe not. You're going to have to accept that she might never be ready. That might be the consequence you have to live with. Gilbert looked up at me finally, his face wet with tears. How do you do it? How do you keep going when you've ruined everything? You just do, I said. You wake up, you make coffee, you go through the motions, and maybe someday it gets easier. Or maybe it doesn't, but you keep going anyway because that's what people do. I turned to leave, then stopped. Gilbert, I've made a decision. He looked at me, fear in his eyes. I'm not leaving you, I said. Not yet, anyway. But I'm not staying for you either. I'm staying for Maeve, for our children, for the family we're trying to rebuild, and I'm staying because Lorelei asked me to make sure her daughter wasn't alone. And I can't do that if I walk away from everything. Eleanor, I'm not done, I interrupted. I'm staying. But things between us are different now. I don't trust you anymore. I don't look at you the same way. And I don't know if that will ever change. We're married, but we're not us anymore. Do you understand? Gilbert nodded slowly. Yes. Okay then, I said. I walked back to the living room where my children were helping clean up, where laughter and life continued despite everything. And I thought about Lorelei's letter, about prayers and actions, about how some wounds need more than whispers in the dark. We were trying now, finally trying to do more than whisper, trying to take action, trying to make sure Maeve wasn't alone. It was 46 years too late for Lorelei. But maybe, just maybe, it was enough for Maeve. 6 months passed like water through cupped hands. Winter came to Cedar Rapids, covering everything in snow, making the world look clean and new, even when nothing underneath had changed. Maeve came to Sunday dinners regularly now. She'd become part of the rhythm of our family, her laugh mixing with Theodore's terrible jokes, her stories about her elementary school students making Harrison smile despite himself, her quiet moments with Vivian that looked like what sisters should have always been. The grandchildren adored her. She taught them card games that Lorelei had taught her, games with names like Kings in the Corner and Spite and Malice. Sometimes I'd watch her deal cards to the kids and see Lorelei in every movement, a woman I'd never met living on in her daughter's gestures. Gilbert still stayed in the bedroom during these dinners. 6 months, and Maeve still wasn't ready. Every Sunday, he'd listen to the sounds of family and laughter coming from the dining room, separated by a single door that might as well have been an ocean. I watched him shrink into himself during those months. He'd lost 20 pounds he couldn't afford to lose. His hands shook all the time now. He moved through the house like a ghost barely there. We still slept in separate rooms. Still barely spoke except about practical matters. Bills that needed paying, repairs the house needed, which grandchild's birthday was coming up. We lived like roommates who used to be married. Some mornings I'd wake up and forget for just a moment that everything had changed. I'd think about making his coffee the way he liked it. Then I'd remember the box hidden in the wall, the letters, the daughter who died waiting. And I'd make my own coffee and leave his mug in the cupboard. But I didn't leave him. I'd made that decision and I stuck with it, even on the days when staying felt like drowning. On a Wednesday in early March, my phone rang. It was Maeve. "Eleanor, can we talk?" "Of course, honey. What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," she said quickly. I've been thinking about something and I need advice. Can I come over?" "Maeve, it's Sunday dinner this weekend. You'll see me then?" "I know, but this can't wait until Sunday. Please?" The urgency in her voice worried me. "Come over now. I'll make tea." 20 minutes later, Maeve was sitting at my kitchen table, nervously shredding a napkin between her fingers. "What is it?" I asked gently. "It's my birthday next month," Maeve said. "I'll be 24. And I've been thinking, my mom always made my birthday special. Even when money was tight, she'd make it special. This will be my first birthday without her." "Oh, honey," I said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "Vivian offered to throw me a party. A small one with the family. And I want that, I really do, but..." She looked up at me, her green eyes swimming with tears. "I keep thinking about my mom, about how she would have wanted me to have family at my birthday, real family, all of it." I felt my stomach drop because I knew where this was going. "I want to meet him," Maeve said. "Gilbert, I want to meet my grandfather. At my birthday party. I'm not saying I'm ready to forgive him. I don't know if I ever will be, but my mom forgave him. And she's gone. And I'm here. And I think..." She took a shaky breath. "I think carrying around this anger is heavier than just meeting him would be." I sat back in my chair, processing this. "Maeve, you don't have to do this. You don't owe him anything." "I know," she said. "This isn't for him. It's for me. And maybe a little bit for my mom. She spent her whole life forgiving him. The least I can do is, I don't know, try, once." "Okay," I said slowly. "If you're sure." "I'm not sure," Maeve admitted. "But I'm going to do it anyway. Will you help me? Will you tell him?" After Maeve left, I sat at that kitchen table for a long time, staring at nothing. Finally, I walked to the bedroom where Gilbert spent most of his days now. He was sitting in the chair by the window, reading or pretending to read. He looked up when I came in. "Maeve came by," I said. His whole body went rigid. "Is she okay?" "She's fine. Her birthday's next month. Vivian's throwing her a party." I paused. "Maeve wants you there. She wants to meet you." Gilbert's face went white. The book slipped from his hands and fell to the floor. "What?" "She wants to meet you," I repeated. "At her birthday party. She's not promising forgiveness. She's not promising anything except that she'll meet you. Once." "Eleanor, I can't," Gilbert said, his voice shaking. "What would I say to her? How do I face her after everything?" "The same way you should have faced Lorelei 46 years ago," I said sharply. "With honesty, with humility, with the knowledge that you don't deserve her grace, but you're going to accept it anyway because she's offering it." "I'll ruin it," Gilbert said desperately. "I'll say the wrong thing. I'll make it worse." "Maybe," I agreed. "But you're going to try anyway. Because Maeve is giving you a chance that you don't deserve. And you're not going to waste it by being too much of a coward to show up." I walked to the door, then turned back. "You have 1 month to figure out what you're going to say to your granddaughter. Use it." The next 4 weeks, our house was a strange mix of tension and preparation. Vivienne came over repeatedly to plan the party with me. We decided to have it here at our house on Maple Street, where Maeve had already become comfortable with Sunday dinners. Theodore insisted on baking the cake himself. Chocolate with raspberry filling, Maeve's favorite. Harrison ordered decorations. The grandchildren made cards, and Gilbert paced. He wrote notes on scraps of paper and threw them away. He practiced speeches in the bathroom mirror. He asked me a dozen times what he should wear, as if the right outfit could somehow make up for 46 years of absence. Just wear a clean shirt, I finally snapped. She doesn't care what you're wearing. She cares whether you're going to be honest with her. The morning of Maeve's birthday, I woke early. The house was quiet except for the sound of Gilbert moving around in the kitchen. When I went downstairs, I found him sitting at the table with a small, wrapped box in front of him. "What's that?" I asked. "A gift," Gilbert said. "For Maeve. I don't know if I should give it to her. Is it inappropriate? Is it too much?" I sat down across from him. "What is it?" He unwrapped it slowly, revealing a small photo album. Inside were the photographs that had been hidden in the box. Lorelei as a baby, a child, a teenager. But Gilbert had added things. He'd printed out old photographs of Corinne that must have come from the letters, pictures of Lorelei's grandparents, his own parents, who'd died years ago. "I thought," Gilbert's voice cracked, "I thought Maeve might want to know where she comes from. Her mother's family, her grandmother, her great-grandparents, the family history she never got to know because of me." It was, I realized, the first truly thoughtful thing Gilbert had done in this whole mess. Not about his guilt or his regret, just about Maeve and what she might need. "Give it to her," I said. "It's good." People started arriving at 2 o'clock. Vivian and her family first, arms full of presents and decorations. Then Theodore and James with the elaborate cake. Harrison and Nina with more gifts than any 24-year-old needed. The grandchildren ran around the house, excited for a party. The adults set up tables and chairs, hung streamers, arranged food. Gilbert stayed in the bedroom. At 3 o'clock, Maeve arrived. She wore a simple blue dress and her auburn hair was down around her shoulders. She looked so much like Vivian at that age that it took my breath away. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," I said, hugging her. "Thank you for doing this," Maeve said. "For all of it. For the past 6 months, for giving me family." "You always had family," I said. "We just didn't know about each other yet." The party started. We ate cake and opened presents, and the grandchildren played games. Theodore taught Maeve a card game she didn't know, which delighted him to no end. Harrison told stories about his kids that made everyone laugh. It felt like family, like what family should be. And for a moment, I let myself forget about the man hiding in the bedroom. Let myself just enjoy this. Watching my children welcome their niece, watching my grandchildren gain a cousin, watching something beautiful grow out of all this pain. But at 4 o'clock, Maeve set down her cake plate and looked at me. "Is he here?" Everyone went quiet. "Yes," I said. "In the bedroom, waiting. He wasn't sure if you'd actually want to see him." Maeve took a deep breath. "Okay, can you ask him to come out?" Vivian reached for Maeve's hand. "Are you sure? You don't have to do this." "I know," Maeve said, "but I want to. I need to." I walked down the hallway to the bedroom. Gilbert was sitting on the edge of the bed, the photo album in his hands, looking like a man about to face his execution. "It's time," I said. Gilbert stood up slowly. His hands were shaking so badly the album nearly fell. I took it from him and handed it back once he'd steadied himself. "Just be honest," I said. "Don't make excuses. Don't try to explain away what you did. Just tell her the truth and let her decide what to do with it." We walked back to the living room together. The party had gone completely silent. Everyone was watching as Gilbert appeared in the doorway. Maeve stood up from the couch. She and Gilbert looked at each other across the living room. I could see Lorelei and Maeve's face. Could see Gilbert's eyes, his dark hair, the shape of his jaw. Could see the family resemblance that should have been acknowledged 46 years ago. "Hi," Maeve said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hi," Gilbert said back. Then his voice broke. "Happy birthday, Maeve?" Maeve nodded. Didn't say anything. Gilbert stood there awkwardly, clearly lost. Finally, he held out the photo album. "I brought you something. I don't know if it's appropriate, but I thought you might want to see pictures of your mother, of your grandmother, Corinne, of where you come from." Maeve took the album slowly, opened it. Her eyes widened as she saw the photographs inside. "Is this my mom?" she asked, pointing to a picture of tiny baby Lorelei. "Yes," Gilbert said. "That's the day she was born. March 15th, 1979. Corinne sent me that picture. I should have been there. I should have held her, but I wasn't. And I kept the picture anyway, like keeping a picture was enough." Maeve flipped through more pages. And this is my grandmother? Yes, that's Corinne when she was young, before she got pregnant. She was beautiful, smart, funny. She deserved so much better than what I gave her. She was, Maeve said softly. Beautiful, I mean. Smart and funny, too. I knew her until I was 18. She died when I was in college. I'm sorry, Gilbert said. I'm sorry I wasn't there for her either. I'm sorry for all of it. Maeve closed the album and looked up at Gilbert. Her eyes were dry, assessing. My mom wrote you letters for 30 years. Did you read them? Every single one, Gilbert said. I read them all. I kept them all. But you never wrote back. No. Why not? Gilbert took a shaky breath. Because I was ashamed. Because every letter was a reminder of what I'd done, of who I'd abandoned. And I didn't know how to face that. So I prayed instead. Every morning for 43 years, I prayed for your mother. I said her name. I asked God to watch over her. I thought that was enough. But it wasn't, Maeve said. No, Gilbert agreed. It wasn't. Prayers without action are just words in the dark. Your mother knew that. She wrote it in her last letter to Eleanor. And she was right. Maeve was quiet for a long moment. The entire room held its breath. My mom forgave you, Maeve finally said. She told me she did, years before she died. She said you were young and scared and that holding on to anger wasn't worth it. She said everyone deserves a second chance. Gilbert's eyes filled with tears. She was a better person than I deserved. Yes, Maeve agreed. She was. And I'm not her. I'm not as good as she was. I'm not as forgiving. But I'm trying to be. So I'm going to say this once, and you need to listen. She stood up straighter, her voice growing stronger. You abandoned my mother. You let her grow up without a father. You let her die without ever meeting you. You prayed for her while she was alone, while she was sick, while she was dying. And that's something I'll never fully understand or forgive. Gilbert nodded, tears streaming down his face. But, Maeve continued, you're here now. You showed up to my birthday. You gave me pictures of my family. And my mom asked Eleanor to make sure I wasn't alone. She asked for me to know my family. So I'm going to try. I'm going to try to let you be part of my life. Not because you deserve it, but because my mom wanted it. And because I'm tired of being angry. Thank you, Gilbert whispered. Thank you, Maeve. I don't deserve... No, Maeve interrupted. You don't, but I'm giving it to you anyway. That's what forgiveness is. It's not about deserving. It's about choosing not to carry the weight anymore. She held up the photo album. Thank you for this. For these pictures. I'll treasure them. Gilbert nodded, unable to speak. But I need you to understand something. Maeve said, if you're going to be in my life, you have to actually be in it. No more hiding. No more prayers without action. If you say you're going to call, you call. If you say you'll be somewhere, you show up. Because I already lost one parent who wasn't there. I'm not going to let you be another person who's present, but not really there. Do you understand? Yes, Gilbert managed. I understand. I'll do better, I promise. Okay then, Maeve said. She looked around at everyone watching. Can we please just eat more cake now? This is my birthday, and I'd like it to be less emotionally devastating. The tension broke. Everyone laughed, relief flooding through the room. Theodore immediately cut more cake. The grandchildren went back to playing. Vivian hugged Maeve tightly, and Gilbert stood in the middle of the living room, looking like a man who'd been given a gift he didn't know what to do with. The party continued for another 2 hours. Slowly, carefully, Gilbert joined in. He sat on the edge of things at first, watching. But then young Emma, who never met a stranger, dragged him over to play a card game that Maeve was teaching. I watched Gilbert sit next to his granddaughter for the first time. Watched him fumble with the cards, clearly having no idea how to play, but trying anyway. Watched Maeve patiently explain the rules. Her voice gentle but not quite warm. It wasn't forgiveness. Not really. But it was a beginning. As the sun began to set and people started gathering their things to leave, Maeve came over to where I was washing dishes. Thank you, she said, for pushing him to come out. For making this happen. You're the one who made it happen, I said. You're the one who was brave enough to give him a chance. My mom would have wanted me to, Maeve said. And I realized holding on to the anger was just hurting me, not him. He was already drowning in his own guilt. My anger was just extra weight I was carrying for no reason. Your mother raised you well, I said. She did, Maeve agreed. Her eyes filled with tears. I miss her so much. Every day. But having you all, having this family, it makes it a little bit easier. You'll always have us, I promised. No matter what happens between me and Gilbert, you'll always have us. After everyone left, after the house was cleaned up and quiet again, Gilbert and I sat at the kitchen table. The photo album Maeve had left behind for him to make copies of sat between us. She gave me a chance, Gilbert said, his voice full of wonder. After everything, she gave me a chance. Yes, I said. She did. I won't waste it, Gilbert said fiercely. I promise you, Eleanor. I won't waste it like I wasted everything with Lorelei. See that you don't, I said. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Gilbert said, what about us? Is there any chance? I looked at this man I'd been married to for 43 years. This man who'd lied to me every single one of those days. This man who'd hidden a daughter and prayed in secret instead of being honest. I don't know, I said honestly. I don't know if I'll ever trust you again. I don't know if I'll ever look at you the way I used to. I don't know if what we had can be repaired. But you're still here, Gilbert said. I'm still here, I agreed. Not because I've forgiven you, not because everything is okay, but because Lorelei asked me to take care of Maeve. Because our children need both their parents right now, even if their father is broken. Because walking away felt like letting Lorelei down. That's not the same as loving me, Gilbert said quietly. No, I agreed. It's not, but it's what I have to give right now. Gilbert nodded slowly. He understood, I think, that this was as good as it was going to get, that he'd burned something in our marriage that might never grow back. I'll take it, he finally said. I'll take whatever you can give, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of it. Don't try to be worthy of me, and I said, try to be worthy of Maeve. Try to be worthy of the chance she gave you today. Try to be the grandfather you never were a father. I will, Gilbert promised. I swear to you I will. 3 months later, on a warm June evening, we all gathered at Lorelei's grave in Dubuque. It was Maeve's idea. She'd finally decided what to do with her mother's house. She'd sold it. Couldn't bear living there alone with the memories. But before she left Dubuque for good, before she moved to an apartment in Des Moines to be closer to family, she wanted to visit her mother's grave. With all of us. We stood in a semicircle around the headstone. The grass had grown over the grave now, making it look settled, peaceful, like Lorelei had always been there, waiting for family to find her. Maeve placed flowers on the grave, bright summer flowers that looked like hope. Hi, Mom, Maeve said softly. I brought everyone. Finally, the family you wanted me to know. She introduced us one by one, pointed to each person, and told Lorelei who they were. That's Vivian, your daughter. She looks like you, doesn't she? She's been amazing to me. Like the sister I never had. That's Theodore, your son. He makes terrible jokes, but he's got the biggest heart. He's already treating me like I've always been part of the family. That's Harrison, your other son. He was angry at first, but he came around. He checks on me every week now. Those are the grandchildren you never got to meet. They're wonderful, Mom. So full of life and joy. And that's Eleanor, Gilbert's wife. I don't know what to call her. Stepmother-in-law? Family? She's family. She's been taking care of me like you asked her to. She's been making sure I'm not alone. Finally, Maeve turned to Gilbert, who stood slightly apart from everyone else, as if he didn't quite believe he deserved to be here. And that's Gilbert, Maeve said. Your father, the one who wasn't there for you. But he's trying now, Mom. I know it's too late for you. I know it doesn't change anything. But he's trying to be a grandfather to me, and I'm letting him. Not because he deserves it, but because you'd want me to. Maeve turned back to the headstone. I'm not alone anymore, Mom. I have family. Just like you wanted. Thank you for that last letter. Thank you for asking Eleanor to take care of me. Thank you for forgiving him even when you didn't have to. Thank you for teaching me that love is stronger than anger. Tears were streaming down Maeve's face now, down all our faces, really. I love you, Mom, Maeve whispered. I miss you every single day. But I'm going to be okay. We're all going to be okay. She stepped back, and Vivian immediately put her arm around her. They stood like that, aunt and niece, looking exactly like the sisters they should have been. Gilbert stepped forward hesitantly. He knelt down by the grave, his old knees protesting, and placed his hand on the headstone. Lorelei, he said, his voice shaking. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I wish I'd been brave enough to know you. I wish I'd been there for you. I wish I could go back and do everything differently. He was crying openly now. But I can't. All I can do is promise to be there for Maeve, to be the grandfather I never was a father, to show up, to take action instead of just praying. That's all I have left to give you, a promise to do better. He stood up slowly, using the headstone for support, and stepped back to where I stood. I looked at Lorelei's name carved into the stone. Lorelei Ashford, Beloved mother and daughter. 1979, 2025, 46 years. Not nearly long enough. Thank you, Lorelei, I said quietly. For Maeve. For forgiving Gilbert when he didn't deserve it. For being kind to me in that letter even though you had every reason not to be. For teaching your daughter to be as strong and forgiving as you were. I paused, then added, I'll keep my promise. Maeve won't be alone. I'll make sure of it. We stood there for a while longer, all of us together, family finally united around someone who should have been there all along. As we walked back to the cars, the sun setting over the Iowa landscape, Maeve fell into step beside me. Do you think she knows, Maeve asked, that we were all here together? I think she knows, I said. And I think she's happy about it. Me too, Maeve said. She linked her arm through mine. Thank you, Eleanor. For everything. For choosing to stay when you could have left. For helping us all find each other. You're welcome, sweetheart. Behind us, I could hear my children talking, laughing, Gilbert walking quietly with them, but there, present, finally showing up. It wasn't a perfect ending. There was too much pain, too much loss, too many years that could never be recovered. But it was an ending where Maeve wasn't alone, where a family that had been fractured by secrets was slowly healing, where prayers had finally become actions. And sometimes I've learned that's all you can hope for, not perfection, not complete forgiveness, just people trying to be better than they were, just families finding each other despite everything, just love persisting in the face of betrayal, just showing up, again and again and again, until showing up becomes enough. 1 year later, I'm 71 now, and Gilbert and I still sleep in separate rooms. We probably always will. Some things, once broken, never quite fit back together the same way. But we're still married, still living in the same house on Maple Street, still having Sunday dinners where Maeve is always welcome. Gilbert is part of Maeve's life now. He calls her every Wednesday, shows up to things he promises to show up to. Sent her flowers on Mother's Day with a note that said, Your mother raised you well. It's not a fairy tale. It's not redemption, really. Gilbert will carry his guilt about Lorelei until the day he dies, and I'll carry the weight of his lies until I do. But Maeve is thriving. She's in graduate school now, studying to be a teacher. She comes to Sunday dinners and holidays and random Tuesday afternoons when she just wants to sit on our porch and drink lemonade. She calls me Gran. She calls Gilbert by his first name, not Grandpa. Maybe someday that will change. Maybe it won't. And you know what? That's okay. Because this was never about Gilbert's redemption. It was never about whether I could forgive him. It was never even about healing our marriage. It was about making sure a 23-year-old girl who just lost her mother wasn't alone in the world. It was about honoring a dying woman's last request. It was about prayers finally becoming action. Some wounds need more than whispers in the dark. They need courage. They need showing up. They need people who are willing to do the hard work of loving each other even when it hurts. Lorelei knew that. She lived it. She taught it to her daughter. And now we're all trying to live it too. Gilbert was right about one thing. Prayer does matter. But prayer without action is just talking to yourself in the dark. It's wishes that don't come true. It's comfort that doesn't reach the people who need it. Real love requires more than whispers. It requires showing up, even when it's 43 years too late, even when you don't deserve it, even when you're not sure forgiveness is possible. You show up anyway, because that's what family does. You know what makes me the angriest about this whole story? Gilbert had 43 years to be brave, 43 years to pick up a phone, 43 years to write one letter back, just one. Instead, he hid behind prayers. He whispered a name in the dark and called it love. He thought guilt and regret were the same as being present. They're not. Lorelei died without ever meeting her father. That's something that can never be fixed, never be undone. All the regret in the world doesn't bring her back. If you think Gilbert should have been braver, if you think he should have faced Lorelei while she was alive instead of crying at her funeral, hit that like button right now. Don't be someone who waits until it's too late to do the right thing. And here's what I need to know. Would you have forgiven Gilbert if you were in my shoes? Would you have stayed? Or would you have packed your bags and walked away? Drop a comment and tell me honestly, am I crazy for staying with a man who lied to me for 43 years? Or did I do the right thing by keeping the family together for Maeve's sake? Because I'm still not sure. Some days I think I made the right choice. Other days I think I'm a fool. Subscribe to this channel if you believe that actions matter more than words. If you believe that showing up matters more than praying in secret. If you believe that family is worth fighting for, even when it's messy and complicated and painful. I'm sharing our story because I don't want anyone else to make Gilbert's mistakes. I don't want anyone else to think that whispers in the dark are enough. That regret is the same as redemption. Don't be like Gilbert. Don't hide from the hard conversations. Don't let fear steal your relationships. Don't wait until someone is dead to finally care about them. Face the truth, take action, show up before it's too late. Because once someone is gone, all the prayers in the world won't bring them back, and you'll have to live with that for the rest of your life. In the meantime, on the final screen, I'm leaving you with two of the channel's most beloved stories. I'm sure they will surprise you. Thank you for staying with me until now.